Well, I started a little segment on the alternate leaf dogwood as it was just coming into bloom the second week of May here in the Mid-Ohio Valley. And here's the results of those flowers, which were out for about 2 weeks. And we're starting to get some berries on here. They're nice and green right now, but they will turn blue as the summer progresses. And I have found more of that after doing that exploration that week. This is on a moist, steep northwest facing slope here, right across the bike trail here from the Little Miami River here in Warren County, Ohio. So a moist, cooler habitat for this tree. Also found some in Brown County, Indiana while searching for yellowwood trees in a similar habitat. Well, it's 5 weeks later. It's the third week of June. Let's go up to a sunnier, warmer habitat on this hillside here. I found a third variety of dogwood in this park. This is at the Fort Ancient State Memorial that is more common west of my location, all the way out to the central and southern plains. And a couple hundred feet up in elevation in an area with some partial sun and partial shade here, we have a very common tree to be found in such habitats, and that's our flowering dogwood, which was blooming in late April. And our alternate leaf dogwood bloomed in May, and now it's the third week of June. And we've got another dogwood in bloom. This is called the Roughleaf Dogwood. Again, it's getting some partial sun here. I'm finding it along fence rows and along that bicycle path I just showed a few minutes ago. It's pretty common in places where it's either getting full sun or part sun. And down the hill here, we've got some growing in the understory we'll look at in a few minutes here. But it's often found in edge areas, often like the flowering dogwood. And this is the valley of the Little Miami River here in Warren County, Ohio. We've got a large interstate bridge in the background there on Interstate 71, almost 300 feet high. And our roughleaf dogwood is in blooming here in mid-June. Some of these have already lost their petals, and the fruits are starting to form. Those fruits will turn white. And here's one that's still got plenty of flowers left. We got an insect on there pollinating it. So these flowers closely resemble those of that alternate leaf dogwood. There's lots of little flowers in a cluster here, probably a few dozen of them in a cluster. The cluster itself is not even as big as my index finger, maybe 2.5 to 3 inches across. But the rough leaves, you can certainly feel it, and you may be able to hear it in this video. They've got a fuzzy feel to them on the top and on the bottom, and the bottom is quite light in color, and hence the name roughleaf dogwood. That rough part of the leaf, because this grows in the central and southern plains, it's a very hot climate in the summertime, and the little hairs on leaves is an adaptation for keeping them from drying out. So many plants often have that in stressful climates. This is our roughleaf dogwood. Let's go down the hill. I've got some here that are actually larger than this that have formed the understory. There's another one right here. And then we've got our regular dogwood, the flowering dogwood, right down the steps here with a much smoother leaf. So it's not rough at all. It's shiny, it's smooth, and it is lighter on the bottom. The flowering dogwood leaf is lighter on the bottom than that of the roughleaf dogwood. And don't have any fruits on this one for us to inspect, but the fruits do look different and the flowers look much different. And we've got some low humidity today. Makes for great videos. Blue sky and comfortable temperatures here. That doesn't usually last the whole summer. We get our breaks from the humidity, and then usually within a few days it's back. Here's our roughleaf dogwood in the understory of this oak hickory forest. Got mostly red oak growing on this hillside here. A little bit of chinkapin oak in the mix. We got a little sassafras here. And this is very common in areas where you often find the flowering dogwood in this park as well. So you're often finding both. So again, here's our flowers. A lot of them have lost their petals, but some are still hanging around in the middle of June, third week of June here, with these rough leaves. This one here is actually curled up, so that's what a tree can often do if it's under stress, is curl up. Keep it from becoming too dehydrated. The bark is down this steep hill here. It's a little hard to see. We got some down the trail here we can look at again, but this is about 12, 14 feet high. A little shorter on average than the flowering dogwoods in this park, but I have seen them in other parks where they're almost 30 feet high. So it's a very similar tree to the flowering dogwood as far as its form goes and where it grows. Let's look at some leaves. This is the underside of the alternate leaf dogwood with that curved veins that almost come back and touch the middle here. That's called arcuate veination. Here's our flowering dogwood, which is just a little bit larger and wider on average. Again, this is the underside of those leaves, and this is the underside on the left here of two leaves from this roughleaf dogwood. They tend to be a little narrower than the flowering dogwood leaf or the alternate leaf dogwood leaf, but they do come off opposite each other just like the flowering dogwood leaves. So again, our veins kind of curve back towards the main stem. Not quite as pronounced on these as it was on the flowering dogwood and the alternate leaf dogwood. Now let's flip these leaves over on the top side. You're going to see a big difference in how shiny they are. And again, they're much smoother. Our alternate leaf dogwood is very smooth to the touch. Flowering dogwood as well. And just in comparison, you can see how much shinier these two smooth leaf dogwoods are compared to the rough leaf dogwood, which doesn't shine as much. And you can hear that in these videos. I've already checked. So it's an obvious difference in the texture or touch of the leaves and in the width of them as well. And that arcuate veination is not obvious when you're looking from the top. It's there, but it's not easy to see unless you flip the leaves over on the rough leaf dogwood. And while walking towards some other roughleaf dogwood trees, let's just take a quick peek at the fruits of this flowering dogwood, which again, the flower is much different than the alternate and roughleaf dogwood flowers, and the fruits are as well. They tend to be in a little bunch here. They'll turn bright red in the fall. I've got a little video on the fall foliage and fruits of these trees already on this channel. But there's definitely a difference. Once the fruits mature, they turn different colors after the green stage. The bark on this flowering dogwood, as I've mentioned in my other videos, has obvious pattern. It's textured, it's got little polygons, and the alternate leaf dogwood does not get that. And we'll take a look at this rough leaf dogwood. It has some texture, but it's not in these little shapes like you would find on this flowering dogwood. And I've got a few more rough leaf dogwood flowers in my view here. And I can probably say on average, some of these roughleaf dogwood leaves are much smaller and narrower than those of the other two dogwoods. And again, that arcuate veination is not obvious unless you flip it over, but it is obvious from the underside. Got a couple specimens here. We've got about 15 feet high. Got one right here, reaching up towards the sky. There is a break in the canopy here from a tree that fell down a few years ago. So that's given this dogwood a chance to grow a little taller. Let's look at our bark here. This bark has got a little texture to it. Almost looks like other hardwood trees, like a hop hornbeam, or even a soft or a hard maple or sugar maple in color. It doesn't have those obvious polygons. I did find one a few days ago. I was out on my bicycle that had it was quite a bit larger, and it looked almost like a hop hornbeam bark. But most of these are just, you know, got a little texture to them, but they don't have these obvious polygons that the flowering dogwood has. So I think the bark is easy to tell apart, and so are the leaves and flowers and fruits from the other dogwoods I'm trying to cover on this channel. And as far as geographic range goes, I mentioned at the start of this video, this extends out into the central and southern plains. It does not go much further east here than the midpoint of Ohio, about Route 23, according to the range maps, and doesn't go north of Chicago or Detroit. So it's more of a western half of the Ohio Valley and mid-Mississippi Valley and eastern half of the Great Plains tree. And now that I've started to look for it, I'm starting to find it on a lot of the hikes in this area and along the bike trails and fence rows of this area. So where it is found, it's actually quite common. And we'll just make one more stop on our way through this study of the Roughleaf Dogwood. Well, about 30 miles north of that last clip. We're at the edge of a power line right away here. This is at the Creekside Reserve in Greene County, Ohio. And this is where I'm often seeing this. I do see it in the woods, but even more so along these edge areas. You got a really nice, mature roughleaf dogwood here, and again, we can hear that. Feels like a real fine sandpaper. And it's past its peak of flowering, but there's still some flowers left. And this guy's the whole cluster of these trees here. There's one here. Again, the branches want to grow towards the sun, so they're heading out away from these larger trees towards the sun and growing laterally like dogwoods often do. But I'm looking up, this guy's got to be 25-30 feet high and reaches out a good 15-20 feet from the main trunk. Zoom in and look at these right there. And on the walk back here, I noticed a lot of elderberry in bloom, and it really doesn't quite look the same, but let's do a short clip on that on the way back, since it's kind of neat to look at anyways. Elderberry never reaches tree size, but it can get 10-15 feet high as a shrub. Now the bark on this larger roughleaf dogwood here has that appearance that I just mentioned about the hop hornbeam type bark. Let's sneak back here and get a better look at that. And there we are. Again, it's got that just a little bit rough. It doesn't really peel off like the hop hornbeam, but it definitely has the same texture and the same, you know, it's got the same amount of space between the little valleys and cracks as a hop hornbeam. It's finely furrowed. And that's about a 3-inch diameter roughleaf dogwood we're looking at here. And because this has the same habitat as some of these roughleaf dogwoods, and it blooms the same time of year and has similar flowers, let's take a look at this elderberry. This is considered a shrub, not a tree, but this one here is good, reaching towards the sky, a good 10-12 feet high with this sumac here. And a large cluster of flowers, and the flowers are very similar to those of that roughleaf dogwood, but look at the size of that cluster. It's as big as as an adult person's hand, much larger than that of the roughleaf dogwood. Probably 6-8 inches across on some of these. But it's blooming in mid-June, and it's in an edge area. The leaves are compound and fairly smooth to the touch with a toothed edge. So that would help us definitely know that it's not a roughleaf dogwood if there was any doubt. But it is a similar habitat here and blooming at the same time of year. So this is elderberry. I don't know the species, but common in the edge areas and old fields.